Hey, my third grade friends and anybody else following along with Samantha Spinner and the super secret plans. It's officially summer vacation. So this is going to become our summer vacation read because I'm going to finish reading this to you a couple of chapters at a time over the next however long it takes. So when we last left Samantha and Nipper, her brother, they had found the mag train that took them to Paris. Then they had to go in the pneumatic tube, that air tube like at the bank, to Florence, Italy, climbed in a fountain and stuck their finger up the nostril of a statue horse to get back into, and then there was water, and that took them back to Paris, where they got on the mag train, soaking wet, and headed home. And then we found throughout this book that we have had interesting one-page or two-page descriptions of random important things. I guess they're going to become important. So we first learned about the VHSR plan, the very high-speed railway, the mag train. The very first page of this book was the Eiffel Tower. There was the Hope Diamond. Now we know how the Eiffel Tower came into play because that's where they got out of Paris and down to Florence, Italy. So here's one. I'll share my screen with you. The next one, again, seemingly random, but listen carefully to the information because there's a clue in here, is about the RMS Titanic. So if you know about the Titanic, it sunk. It says the RMS Titanic was a British passenger ship that sank in the North Atlantic Ocean during its maiden voyage, the first time it sailed. There's a diagram of it, all the decks that were on it. It was the largest and most luxurious vessel of its day, and its passengers included some of the richest people in the history of the world. It had a state-of-the-art design with a series of innovative watertight compartments that were supposed to make the ship unsinkable. Tragically, the Titanic collided with an iceberg in the early morning of April 15, 1912. It filled with water, snapped in two, and sank. There were not enough lifeboats aboard to carry the passengers, and more than 1,500 people were lost at sea. Some people question why the Titanic sank so quickly. If you have scuba equipment, you can reach the back half of the Titanic from a tunnel that runs below the North Atlantic Ocean. This section of the sunken vessel includes the engine room, coal storage, and several of the ship's secret treasure vaults. Most of the gold bars and other valuable items that these secret vaults held have been removed from the wreck. An estimated $2.4 billion has vanished from the ship, an amount of precious metal that would have far exceeded the ship's weight capacity. Now, does that $2.4 billion number sound familiar? Sam's sister got a check for $2.4 billion. If you take a closer look at things, however, it is still possible to come across treasure when you explore the ruins along the cold, dark ocean floor. So, there's always in those pages the truth, and then there's some things that are good for the story. So you'll have to find out. Chapter 15 is called Watch Out for the Rain. Okay, so remember when her Uncle Paul gave her, Samantha, the umbrella, the sticker on it, the label on it, the tag on it said, watch out for the rain, R-A-I-N, all in capital letters. So they found out the umbrella has that map of all the tunnels, and they've been on some pretty wild adventures. And remember, that all happened in one day because this is still that same day. Their parents went to a pet expo, and so as soon as their parents left and took the dog with them, they went and found the mailbox and went down the tube on the mag train to Paris, Florence, Italy, back to Paris to get home. Chapter 15, Watch Out for the Rain. As soon as Samantha and Nipper made it home, they changed into clean, dry clothes and went to the kitchen. Neither of them had eaten all day, other than when Nipper munched on a few bread cubes. They made themselves sandwiches and were just cleaning up when their parents came in through the side door. "Sorry we're so late, kids," said Mrs. Spinner. "I hope you weren't worried about us." Mr. Spinner leaned his umbrella against the wall and started to hang up his coat, but stopped. He studied his children for a moment. It was the right number of kids, but they were wearing different clothes than they'd been wearing that morning. Samantha's hair was a mess, and she looked like she'd been blasted in the face by a garden hose. Nipper had a bruise about the size of a quarter on his cheek. "You're looking a little rough around the edges, you two," observed their father. "Did something happen while we were gone?" Samantha and her brother glanced at each other. "How was the pet expo?" Samantha asked, changing the subject. What a fine show," Mr. Spinner declared, not even noticing that she hadn't answered his question. He turned and finished hanging up his coat. Then he bent down and grabbed their pug with both hands. "Look what we got," he said, holding Dennis up in front of them. "We already had that dog," said Nipper. "Very funny," their dad said, twisting the pug around to show off a new pet accessory. A wide plastic ring curved around Dennis's neck, just above his sparkling collar with the giant blue gem. Oh, we read about that one. A very faint buzzing sound came from the dog. "It's a Blinky Barker light," their dad said, dropping Dennis back onto the floor. "Show him what you can do, old pal." "Ruff!" the little dog yapped, and a light bulb turned on inside the new collar. It reflected off the jewels on his gold collar and the facets of the big walnut-sized diamond, lighting up the room in a dazzling display of light. Mr. Spinner smiled. "What a splendid use of science," he said, watching Dennis trot off to the living room. Mrs. Spinner walked over and joined the conversation. "It was a strange day at the expo," she said. "Oh, yes," their father chimed in. "We had an encounter with a strange group of people, all dressed in black." Samantha and Nipper glanced at each other again. "We saw them following Dennis around the convention hall," said Mrs. Spinner. "Then they started following your father and me." "They seemed to think they were being sneaky," Mr. Spinner added. "But we noticed right away because they smelled terrible, like smoldering lamp cords or sulfurous filament epoxy." "Here's the strange part," their mother continued. "While one of them tried to grab my attention, the other one grabbed our umbrella. He opened it up in the middle of the convention hall. He got really angry and threw it on the floor." "They walked away without saying anything," said their father. Mrs. Spinner went to the kitchen counter and began sorting through the day's mail. "What is with everyone and their umbrellas?" she wondered as she opened an envelope. "Well, dear, this is Seattle," Mr. Spinner reminded her. It rains a lot in Seattle. Samantha decided not to say anything about smelly ninjas or umbrella snatchers just then. She shot her brother a quick look to keep him quiet. Mrs. Spinner unfolded 5 pages of blue paper. It was a new, unexplained vanishing person form. "Didn't we already fill out 3 of those?" asked Mr. Spinner. A week after Uncle Paul went missing, 2 notices arrived. One was a death certificate for Flip-Flop P. Waffle Maker. Another was an official warning to be on the lookout for an 8-year-old girl in a yellow polka dot blouse who had gone missing in 1973. Many more incorrect forms and crazy mixed-up files had come since then. This one requested additional information for Pablo Rotacion. "I think the police officers who came to our house were clowns," Mrs. Spinner sighed. While their parents worked together at the table filling out the new form, Samantha and Nipper left the house through the kitchen door. "Flip-Flop P. Waffle Maker," Nipper chuckled as they headed across the driveway. "Pablo Rotacion." Samantha giggled, then stopped when she realized what she'd said. "Wait, I think that's Spanish for Paul Spinner." "I don't think anyone's ever going to get Uncle Paul's name right," said Nipper. Samantha became more serious. "And I don't think Uncle Paul is dead either," she said. They stopped at the foot of the stairs to Uncle Paul's apartment over the garage. "You keep saying that," Nipper told her, "but we've been halfway around the world and haven't seen or heard anything about Uncle Paul at all." He looked up at the stairs. "And now we're right back where we started." Samantha pulled the throwing star from her pocket and waved it at Nipper. No, she said, ninjas are hunting for umbrellas on 2 continents, and this is a clue. Samantha and Nipper climbed the stairs next to the garage, entered their uncle's one-room apartment, and began to investigate everything from scratch. They studied all the walls and windowsills. They crawled along the floor and searched under the sofa. They were both sure that somewhere there was a clue about ninjas who smell or uncles who just go missing. What exactly are we looking for? Nipper asked. I have no idea, said Samantha. Another throwing star? Or a note that says, I'm sorry you won't get to spend any time in Florence? Maybe there's a book about umbrellas. They stood back up and began to explore the bookshelves. Samantha started with the books at the top shelf, and Nipper started from the bottom. There were too many to read. Systematically, they inspected the spine of each book. Some had titles printed in English. Others had words in completely unidentifiable languages, if there were words at all. Other books just had symbols on them. Halfway across the bottom shelf, Nipper gasped. He gestured for Samantha to come look at a thick book bound in red leather. 3 engraved symbols ran down the spine: an arrow, a slingshot, and a ninja throwing star. Nipper yanked the book from the shelf and stood up. Encyclopedia Miscellum, he read dramatically. He flipped through the pages and stopped about a third of the way through the book. Chapter 4, he read, Shuriken and those who throw them. Samantha held up the throwing star so they could both see the image engraved in the center. Then she turned the star over. An ornate crown with angled swords decorated each side. Nipper flipped forward a few more pages. Then he held up the book for both of them to read. The Royal Academy of International Ninjas, aka also known as the Rain. The Rain is an international crime syndicate. The organization is designed to consist of 24 members at all times. Said members include 23 martial arts masters and a trained monkey. They specialize in stealth, murder, and theft. They have stolen a super secret diagram giving them access to hidden doorways and transportation networks across the globe. This has transformed them from a mediocre outlaw gang to a worldwide criminal menace. The Ring gathers twice a month to plan crimes. Each meeting's leader is set on a rotating calendar and is responsible for chairing the meeting and for bringing snacks. Together, the ninjas of the Rain have perpetrated some of the most daring art robberies and bank heists in history. They remain at large to this day. That's it, Samantha exclaimed. She marched around the room, shouting at her brother with excitement. Uncle Paul told me to watch out for the Rain. Nipper stood still in front of the bookcase. He quickly did some math in his head. 23 martial arts masters plus 1. 24 meetings. Once a year, there's a meeting that nobody wants to go to, he said. What are you talking about? Asked Samantha. Nobody wants snacks from a monkey, he pointed out. So here's another diagram of the sewers of Paris. Paris has a sewer system different from that of any other city in the world. The first sewer tunnels were built in Paris in 1370, and the government has been adding to them ever since. Today, there are more than 1,000 miles of tunnels bringing fresh water into the city and taking sewage out. Many of the tunnels are also lined with delivery tubes. Up until a few years ago, these formed an air-powered mail system responsible for sending plastic cylinders throughout the city. Letters and small packages were delivered from building to building through the pneumatic tubes. Recently, the Royal Academy of International Ninjas lost their top secret blueprint of hidden passages around the world. They have been stuck in Paris ever since, and they use the sewer system as their headquarters. From there, they prey upon the citizens and treasures of Paris. Some splaining right there. Squeezing through drains, exhaust pipes, and garbage chutes has infused them with the stench and sewage of the City of Light. It has turned them into stink bandits, known to the French authorities as les bandits putreds. This has made it difficult for the ninjas to travel. If they venture beyond the sewers for any length of time, their strong odor gives them away. The Rain is very, very unhappy about being stuck in Paris. They want the super secret plans back now. Chapter 16, Network. Samantha and Nipper stood in the center of their uncle's apartment for a while. They felt triumphant. Uncle Paul was warning me about the ninjas all along, said Samantha. That's great, said Nipper. Now what's our next move? Samantha stood there, tapping one finger on her chin as she tried to come up with an answer. She looked excited for a moment. Then she looked serious again. Then she looked thoughtful. She had nothing. We've just got to keep looking, said Samantha. Somehow we're missing an important clue that can lead us to Uncle Paul. She started to pace around the room impatiently. Why are those ninjas so smelly? She asked, talking faster and louder. And how did they find Dennis and Mom and Dad at the pet expo? She looked at the coffee table. Then she walked over and grabbed the hula hoop trophy. She waved it at the note pinned on the wall. And what's so special about waffles? She shouted dramatically. We don't even know that Uncle Paul's alive, Sam, Nipper shouted back at her, and I don't want to puzzle over this place anymore. He rubbed the bruise on his cheek and cried, I got hit in the face with money today, and I didn't even get to keep it. He gestured toward the window. The sun was starting to set. It's getting dark, he continued, even louder. I'm tired, and Nipper stopped mid-complaint and stared. The sun was sinking lower in the sky, and a nearby street lamp switched on, shining directly through the windows of the apartment. It cast a web of dark lines from the shadow of the basketball net onto the wall across the room. Samantha turned and saw what her brother was staring at. Lines crisscrossed the wall, one running diagonally over Uncle Paul's note. The line crossed through 4 letters. E-D-F-U. Edfu? Nipper asked. Samantha was already reaching for a large atlas on the shelf next to the Encyclopedia Macilium. She opened the book, turned to the index, and scanned the list of cities and countries. Edfu, Egypt, she answered, and closed the book. That was short. I'm going to keep going. Chapter 17, Operation Flip-Flop. Samantha remembered Edfu from their first visit to the mag train station. The name was one of those carved into the arches above the tunnels. At the time, she'd had no idea what Edfu meant, or if it was even a real word. Now it was their best, clearest clue to what happened to their missing uncle. Tomorrow's a big day, she told Nipper as they marched back across the driveway. She held the umbrella tightly by the middle, pointing it toward the house. This time we're going to be prepared and we're going to do things right. It occurred to her that she sounded a little bit like a general or a football coach. That was just fine with her. We'll bring snacks, she said. Check, Nipper answered. We're going to bring some emergency money, she said. Check, said Nipper. Umbrella, check. Magnifying glass. Hand lens, Nipper corrected her. And check. Samantha opened the side door of their house, stepped inside, flipped on the kitchen light, and continued. And we'll need some light, she said, tired of stumbling around in the dark. Yes, said Nipper, and we're bringing Dennis. Samantha looked at her brother in the eye and thought about this for a few seconds. Okay, she said. Meet here first thing in the morning? Nipper asked. She looked over at the refrigerator. A note in her mother's handwriting was held to the door by a magnet shaped like a pair of boxer shorts. Chinchilla Festival, Sunday, 10 a.m. Let's wait until Mom and Dad leave, she said. 10:15. Nipper gave her 2 thumbs up. Samantha started to march up the stairs. Then she caught herself and stopped. She peered up to make sure her parents weren't in the hall. Then she tiptoed quietly to her bedroom and went right to sleep. At 10:15 a.m., Samantha went down to the kitchen. Nipper was already waiting for her with Dennis panting happily at his feet. I've got snacks, she said, holding up a plastic bag filled with crackers. Dennis watched the bag carefully. I've researched Egyptian money, said Samantha. There's no way we're going to get Egyptian pounds quickly. Don't worry, said Nipper. I've got us covered. 100. She held up a crisp bill and waved it in the air. Wait, said Samantha. Let me take a closer look at that bill. Uncle Paul gave me this 100 for my birthday last year, he said, and slipped it into his front pocket. Dennis kept watch on the bag of crackers. Samantha felt her pocket to make sure she had the little black journal. "Wait here and I'll find some light," she said. She headed out of the kitchen through the living room and into Mr. Spinner's study at the back of the house. There were stacks of cardboard boxes everywhere, bulging with papers, electrical cables, and strange tools. There was a framed portrait of George Washington Carver on one wall. Between a tower of rubber bins and a trash can filled with rolled up posters, she found his little wooden desk. Samantha knew that her dad kept samples of experimental light bulbs in the desk drawer. She fished around until she found a small padded envelope labeled X27B. Sure enough, there was a tiny bulb inside. "This won't be missed," she said, holding it up between two fingers and examining it. Then she hurried back to the kitchen. "Dog, please," she said. Her brother hoisted Dennis from the floor and held him out to her. The dog collar buzzed softly. She removed the bulb from the blinky barker and replaced it with the X27B. "Show him what you can do, old pal," Nipper, imitating Mr. Spinner's voice, called to Dennis. "Ruff!" the pug barked on cue. Instantly, bright white light bathed the room. Powerful beams shot from the collar, reflecting off windows, framed photos, a silver travel mug, and a dozen other surfaces in the kitchen. Some of the rays illuminated the gems on Dennis's collar, adding a swirling, scintillating light show to the room. "Yow!" said Samantha, shielding her face with both hands. "Arr!" said Nipper, dropping the dog and turning away with his eyes shut tight. "So very bright." "Bark, old pal," Samantha said, not even trying to sound like her dad. Dennis gave her a quick roof. The collar turned off. It took a full minute for them to recover from the blinding glare. "That," said Nipper, rubbing his eyes, "is one heck of a light bulb." Samantha looked him straight in the eye and pointed at him. "Don't forget to remind me to put it back when we get home." "Absolutely I won't," said Nipper. They took 2 pairs of sunglasses from the junk bowl on the counter. Samantha left a note on the refrigerator for their parents, saying they were going to an all-day party at the Bogdan Lupul house next door. It was going to be a triple feature movie party, and they wouldn't be home until after dinner. "Why are you lying to Mom and Dad about going to the Bogdan Lupuls?" asked Nipper. "I have to do it," she said, "but Uncle Paul is in danger, and he needs us to find him." Then she added, "What would happen if Mom decided to call Morgan Bogan and ask about us?" She grinned a little and waited for Nipper to think. Nipper grinned too. Everything their neighbor said was preposterous. Of course he'd confirm that they were at his house. "You are brilliant, big sister," he bowed to her. "But more important, you are sneaky." Dennis found a cracker that had missed the bag. It was stuck to one leg of the kitchen table a few inches from the floor. Then they all left the house. With the umbrella, the hand lens, sunglasses, crackers, money, and a pug wearing an extremely powerful light bulb, Samantha and Nipper headed down the block to an ordinary-looking mailbox. In minutes, they were standing at the corner of Prospect Street and 13th Avenue. The Volunteer Park water tower rose a block away as they faced the mailbox. This time, they didn't need to check the super-secret plans. 3 times, Nipper reminded his sister. Samantha reached for the mailbox handle. Suddenly, Dennis sniffed the air and growled. "Sam," Nipper reached out and stopped her. "Do you smell burned bacon, dirty socks, and sardines?" Clang! A throwing star sailed between them and caroomed off the top of the mailbox. Dun, dun, dun. And we're going to stop right there. So they're headed off. They're trying to head off back on the mag train that's going to take them to Egypt this time. So they've planned a little bit ahead. They have a light source, they have the magnifying glass, they have snacks, they have money, they brought the dog and his crazy Hope Diamond thing on his collar, but apparently the ninjas are after them. So, exciting summer reading stuff. I will be back with another video in a couple of days, and we will just keep on going every couple of chapters, every couple of days until we finish it and get ready for the second one. I can't wait. Talk to you soon.